significant in terms of number and in terms of magnitude of the impact over the number of new infections, new cases, and you can see here clearly the first wave, the second one, and the third one that is clearly marked in this chart. Correlated with that, we can have naturally the evolution of the mortality related with this disease, and we can see that it was particularly important in the last wave, but the relation between the number of deaths and the number of infected people are in a stable position after the decrease from the beginning of the pandemic, as you can see here on this line that is stable in the last months after huge importance in the beginning, precisely in the beginning of this, I can say, crisis among us. And of course that we have here different behavior of the regional at the regional level, and we can see here the major areas, the biggest areas in Portugal, the northern region and Lisbon and Tagus Valley here, and this position is quite relevant because we have a continuous importance on the Lisbon and Tagus Valley along all the period of the disease, with, of course, the increase on the second and third wave, and a little bit more different from the other regions. And we can also see here the moving average of 14 days that are related with those regions in Portugal. And we can see that the importance and the magnitude is particularly important in the northern region on the second wave, for instance, and on the third wave, we can see clearly that it was Lisbon and Tagus Valley, the most significant area in Portugal, region in Portugal that are related with this impact. You can see all those information and much more than only these charts that I present here in this site. That is the result, or is the site that we are permanently updated with all the informations, normally with a maximum of 2 days of delay. Well, at another level, the municipality level, is the minimum level that we have information related to the disease. We can see that the evolution was clear with the variation now in the second wave, for instance, and on the third wave, that all the country is affected by the disease, and clearly on the Lisbon and Oporto regions. Another form to see the impact of those three waves, we can see here that are where we point the days of the first case reported, and we can see that in the beginning, on the first wave, we have in the Lisbon area, on the Porto area, but basically in the coastal areas of Portugal, of course in the Algarve also. And then they started to spread along the lines to the interior of Portugal. The second wave, it's more clear, related with a more expression on the coastal and to the main axis to the interior of Portugal. And the third wave is general. It generalized all over the country. So the magnitude, but also the spread was quite different from the wave, the first to the third wave. Well, what we try to explain? We try to explain the relations with the spread and the infection process in Portugal, and we could identify three main axes to understand how this disease was spread across Portugal. One is, of course, all the population characteristics that we can understand, and we have in the municipalities, in the regions, and of course the demographics. It's a main issue. Also the social conditions, and another important issue is the income, and also the position and the capacity to maintain the employment, and of course to stay working, but difference according to the economic base of the municipalities, and of course in another level, the behavior from the people and the health status that we try to correlate it with the spread of the disease. The second one that emerged from our analysis was related with mobility. And we have the tradition to have the studies in geography related. And I remember, for instance, Maria Emilia Arroz, that write important pieces, and we revise it in this crisis, when he writes about the spread of the disease, hepatitis, I think it is in English, like this. Yeah. And of course, the other main, work of Peter Gould about HIV disease in the United States, and the relation that we have with the analysis of spread across the space, and the forms of contagious, or the forms of process of relocalization and hierarchical process that we could see when we analyze the spread of COVID-19. And of course, a third issue that we can report, all the accidental outbreaks that emerge, for instance, in the retirement places, or the retired institutions, that make some spots some outbreaks on the territories related with that. But we try to understand this issue, and we try to relate it with some demographic, social, and economic and mobility issues related with population density, aging, disease, several forms of employment, and the types of the based on the location quotient to understand the importance of each branch of economics in the territory, and of course the mobility that we can take from the sensors to understand the use of auto to the daily mobility to work or to school, and the percentage of going out of the municipality from residents to work or to study. And of course, we can see in the last map the definition of employment areas that we can relate it, of course, with the spread of the disease. And with that, we try to make two basic approaches. One in trying to relate it, this situation and the number of cases in 4 moments of the first wave: March 23, May 28, June 8, and June 27. And we try to relate it with 60 different variables and try to make 2 different approaches. One linear approach and process with the multi-linear regression with a stepwise approach, and the other with the use of artificial neural networks that was not linear, this relation. And we have some evidences that could be could be pointed related with the situation of the emergence of cases. On the multilinear regression, we can understand the dimension of population and the population density, the relation with exports, and with tourism, with overnight stays in tourist facilities, and of course the more presence of economic activities related with employment in accommodation, catering, and restaurants, but also education and some related with building construction, and of course the question of mobility when we take in account the population that works outside the municipality of residence. And we had a similar approach and a similar results when we used a non-linear method as the use of artificial neural network and the population density and urbanization, students in higher education that emerge in that analysis. And we could understand how the relation with that with that kind of characteristics of the municipalities. Of course, that we have difference across the different moments that we cutting on in time, and the relations was a little bit different, but the emergence of the main variables that we could pick from this analysis are related with those that I presented. But the question was, okay, we think that mobility is a main issue that we must go in deep to understand the spread of COVID-19. And then we try to get information from the telephonic operators. It could be, we couldn't have that kind of information, even if they are with us aboard in the project, but we couldn't. And we used the information related to the presence of the variance, the variation of the presence reported by Google. And we have the information related with retail and recreation, the variation from the main level, the residential difference, the workplaces, transit stations, parks, grocery and pharmacy. But we did a little bit small differential thing. We try to relate it, the variation of mobility, with a delay of 14 days. So we related the occurrence of new cases related with the mobility 14 days before the occurrence. And we could understand that the relation on the long term on the first wave was quite interesting. It's 0.56, but the second 0.79 and the last 0.74. And with that, we try to explore that relation and try to forecast the next 14 days based on the observation of the actual mobility conditions 14 days before. And the relation was quite interesting because with our model, we could predict, forecast the relations with a very interesting approach and have a very interesting results. Of course, we couldn't make for all the municipalities because we have no data for all the municipalities, and of course that results are much better when we take in account bigger municipalities than the smaller one. So, but in any case, we had some good results related with that. It was another issue that we made, and we are keeping and maintaining these operations. But another thing was related with what change on mobility. And we pick the information, namely for the metropolitan Lisbon metropolitan area, and we can see here the number of the passengers from January 2018 until December 2020. And we can see that after the introduction of the new tariff system in Lisbon metropolitan area and the Porto metropolitan area, we had an increase on the public users, public transport users. Then after the beginning of the first wave, we had a decrease, incredible decrease. Of course, that we have here a problem that are related for 15 of almost 1 month. We had no registrations from the using of ticketing, so the decrease is quite, it's almost 100%, of course, but we had a strong decrease on that. And after April 2020, we have an increase on the use of public transport. We can see here, for instance, and this is the information that we have weekly information from Transport Authority, that is metropolitan, Lisbon metropolitan area. And of course, we have now passenger volume that is half that we had in March ago. Another thing that we had interesting in the analysis is try to see the variation year per year. The variation from January 18 to January 19 and so on. And we can see that after April, we have an increase, a very important increase on the passengers kept for the public transport, and then a strong decrease, especially April 2020, related with the question of no data about the users, but then a slow improvement, but in any case, much more low than the past year. It is in a general. When we pick Lisbon and pick Carris and Metro Lisboa, we had another interesting aspect that we can point it. The capture from the reduction of the prices of the tickets or the mensual pass was not so much interesting that for in the general, and that is obvious. The reduction of the price in Lisbon area was very small. It was very small. It's about €5 on the monthly pass. But in the other case, the reduction after the crisis maintains for all the period of 2020. Special the use of metro. And the question is, why could we understand that? The reason for us is related. For Lisbon area is much more area of workers of the tertiary sector. They have also much more telework, and of course they are also could be used private transport because the income is also much more interesting, and the reduction of the recovery from the passenger was much more more inexpressive than in the other sectors, because if you take the rail, for instance, we have a strongly increase on the use of fair tax. It was the operator where the difference of price was much more important. So we have that data there. It's clear for us, and the recovery is stay much more active than, for instance, in Lisbon, and in Lisbon using the example of Paris and Metro to Lisboa. And that is related with the people who can work at home, who must go to Lisbon and use public transport. When we pick, for instance, the example of the the bus outside Lisbon on the North Bank and the bus on the South Bank, we have a similar expression, and the strong effect of the tariff reduction, it's clear. And of course here the recover much more important than in the Lisbon area. And finally, we have here the variation of the use of the boat, and that the increase was not so much important in the 2019. Probably part of these passengers was kept by the train, the fair tax, and probably a part of these passengers will travel by train because the tariff is much more lower, and we have the same trend of recovering using the public transport. Well, related with that, we tried to make a survey, and we had 1,800 answers all across Portugal, but in special in the Lisbon metropolitan area, and of course Porto metropolitan area. And we tried to understand how was the frequency of trip to work and to school in the pandemics. And half of that people answer that it's day to go to work every days. A quarter 2 or 3 times per week. 6% by 1 time per week, and several with the situation of an unemployment or in layoff, or on working or schools online. On the other hand, we try to understand the model used to daily trips, and you could see that the increase of the use of the automobile and the use of the active modes, walking, and the other guys, they move at all. The reduction of collective public transport and other forms like taxi, but also the new platforms of Uber, Carfy, and so on. So a difference that are consistent with the data that we saw in the last slides. And on the other hand, uh, how often they go out in the during the pandemic moment, and we had here a very strong reduction of the home go outs. Every day is only a fifth of the population, 58% two 3 times for a week, and in some cases much more less frequency that we could understand. And um, how they started to have the acquisition for groceries and food and here we can see that we started to understand the local shops that assume a very relevant importance when we start to go by walking or using car, but they are still very important in other ways also the shopping online. Well, the use of cafes and pastry shops have a very strong reduction. For instance, a fifth left the use of this practice, and they only a fifth they stay using at a short distance on the community or the neighborhood. And the same for clothes acquisition, the barbers and hairdressers, some difference that we can understand. But in this case, we can point here the importance of the online commerce, the electronic commerce in this particular issue that was important in groceries, but much more important here. Of course, we have no online barbers and hairdressers, but we have here when we have in the moment of the answer, they start to go slowly to go to the barber and the hairdressers, and slowly to return to a certain normality. And finally, the restaurants with very big impact on the slow when we could go to the restaurants with a slow use. And finally, the health services that we can show as slow returning to a certain normality. Well, for ending my presentation, what we can see. Well, the first is as we expected, we can point a strong relation with the spread of disease, with mobility patterns. And this is the issue that we can point it. With the pandemic, we can also say that we had a trip reduction, namely when we pointed or taking the longer distance traveled. But this trip reduction was partly related with unemployment, layoff, and of course, the telework and the telestudy. A model shift from the public transport to the auto, the use of new platforms of mobility, and the use of active modes, namely the walking. And of course, the strong reduction of collective public transport. And I pointed this because it's the transport in the collective, because the taxi and the Ubers and so on, they have a good, relative importance during this period. Finally, we can see that local commerce and teleshopping was increasing and make a major point on this pandemic. What can be maintained in the future? Probably in some way the local and community reinforcement through the commerce and some local activities. The teleshopping, yes. Teleworking and telecommuting, I have some doubts. And the major point that I can say here, that is the model shift, or the model split, and the shifting that we could see with the tariff reductions and the future reconfiguration of the transport supply. Probably we will have some time to recover this point. So for this is what I have to say to you, and please make your comments and some questions or something that you can have to discuss among us. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuno, for this very good presentation about well, how the pandemic took place in Portugal and then in the Lisbon metropolitan area, what effects it caused, what change is eventually promoting, and what is on the basis of the pandemic itself. You know, the causes that are more related with the pandemic. Having said this, as usual, I want to give the floor to the audience, namely our students. So you can open your microphones and comment on what Nuno Costa has presented to us, or put some questions to him as well. So please, the floor is yours. We have a first question. Kadir, go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your presentation. I'm curious about one thing. Maybe I couldn't understand because of the Portuguese. Some graphics include Portuguese. I'm curious about something. I think a municipality of Lisbon implementing Metropolitan Municipality of Lisbon implementing a plan for bicycle using in transportation. I think they're increasing the bicycle route and they are supporting to people for buy a new bike. Then also they are supporting the Jira system. So I couldn't see the data about this process. Did you calculated the using of bike, or this data is really less and you count that as a other? Am I clear?
Completely clear. Thank you, Kadir. The importance of the use of bicycling in Lisbon is still very low. We have much more importance of the walking. It's all about 10 to 15% in some cases, and the use of bicycle, it's less than 1%. Okay, so we can see that is important in some areas, but still have a problem that that are related with much more the leisure use of bicycle than the bicycle to make a daily trip, for instance, and still the same, still have that kind of problem. Okay, so we have a huge investment in bicycle lanes. We have also a huge investment in Jira system and promoting the use of bike, but still have little importance in the daily trips. Okay, it's much more related with leisure use than for daily trips, and still have the same importance. It still have the same importance that we had 10 years ago. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. May I?
Yes, please, Heitor, go on.
Thank you, Professor, for your excellent presentation, especially the model that you show us and the accuracy of predicted that model show us. I think it's probably you should. I don't know if you do that, but you should help the task force group to to plan the vaccination of, especially in Lisbon area. But it's a lateral commentary. It's not the main question that I want to do. It's very surprising for me that the reduction in public transport, either in Carris, either in metro, in metropolitan Lisbon. I imagined that the reduction wouldn't be so extensive and so constant also. But the question is two questions. Do you have data about the traffic, the cars traffic around Lisbon and inside Lisbon, especially in the peak time, in the morning or in the afternoon, to compare that one part of the mobility that is split, is shift from the public transport in 2019 and beginning of 2020, January and February, one part of that passengers as go to cars, but another one, what the percentage, in what percentage is possible to imagine that that shift as go in the sense in the opposite sense that previously in the year 2019, because I knew data about the traffic, the cars traffic around Lisbon, and the main streets that go to Lisbon city, and with the beginning of the new tariff program of reduction of tariffs or transport tariffs in April 2019, there has been a reduction in the main roads around Lisbon, about 8% in the daily traffic. 8% is about 50,000 vehicles per day that are reduced, and they has been some shift to public transport, especially to the rail transports, CP and Fertagos. As you mentioned, the bigger reduction in tariffs in passes sociais de transportes has been at Fertagos. The reduction is more than 70% in money, in countable euros. So this is one question. Do you have data about the evolution of the cars traffic around and through Lisbon? The second question is what about the other Europe capitals, Europe's big cities with the pandemic situation? Is it I would say comparable evolution that we have see in Lisbon, or is a fundamental different evolution that has been in Madrid or Paris or London or something in these cities? I don't know if you have data, but probably it would be. I'm very curious about my thesis, because this could be a sign very important to allow or not predict some evolution more or less equal that we can expect in Lisbon, in mobility patterns also evident.
Thank you, Heitor, for your kind words and answer to you. I'm still struggling to have the data for traffic, and even today I try to contact here to have the information to all the municipalities from August to today. But we have some problems related to data disposal. In any case, we have intention to know and to know that information. in any case, the results from the program was very important. We increased 23, 24, 25% of new users on the transit system. Not so evident in Lisbon, of course, because for two main reasons. The use of public transport in Lisbon was higher than the rest of the metropolitan area, of course. And of course, we have, with the pandemic, the population situation are much more related with services and teleworking, and the reduction of use of public transport, what seems to me as a result also for that. In any case, we had a reduction of traffic. And today we have information that the traffic related with the pandemic is much more difficult to compare. Okay, but in any case, we try to do it and to bring to the model to predict and to explain. First to explain and then for prediction. So we try to do that. The data from other cities I have yet. I'll try to get that information. Normally in the end of the year, I try to get the reports of the institutions responsible they are responsible for the management of mobility, but I have not have yet information about the other systems. In any case, the main problem that I can see from now and from the future, that we make a huge step in front with the tariff reduction, but with the pandemic, we are hit by a hammer that will keep us for the next 2-3 years to recover. In any case, I think, and I can imagine that the transformation, not only in the question of money, question related with the program of tariff reduction, it's not itself, but it's also the changing of the transport supply. And I hope that the new contract that the metropolitan area had made with the private sector for the bus service outside Lisbon could be a good form to bring more passengers to the transit system. Not only the question of money, but a better service. I think it could be a good relation. In any case, it was it's the actual framework. It's very difficult to implement those services, but okay, we'll try it, and we will expect to have good results in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Kadir has a second question, right? Yes? Go on, please.
I don't want to occupy my colleagues and your time, but I'm using second time. Sorry for that. Actually, I'm curious about two things. But I can start with the not a scientific data, but it's my observation. The urbanization system in Lisbon, especially in Lisbon, is hard if we consider the increasing of the accommodation cost in Lisbon, this urbanization system is put out the low income people to periphery of the Lisbon. So I'm curious about then also the decrease of the tariff could be a good solution for to sustainable this system. But I'm curious about the relation between personal income and the using percentage of public transportation at the pandemic time. So I'm curious about, did you have this type of data to show that who prefer or who have to use public transportation at the pandemic time? I'm curious about that. And the other thing is the question about the sustainability of transportation service in especially in Lisbon, because I think Karish is the company of municipality, and also municipality can support this company even it's cost a lot. Then also for the train system, I think government can support that, blah blah. But especially in Lisbon, the TVDE, Uber, or this type of companies open lots of business, and lots of people buy the car with credit and open this type of business. So if we consider the decrease of the tourism income, how this process affect the future of this job in Lisbon? Thank you.
Kadir, your question will take for us all semester. Thank you. Because it's hard to answer you, but I try to point several highlights to discuss. First, the users of public transport are the same from 2 years ago. If you okay, because if you get this data, it's similar, much more similar with that. Okay, so the main difference is that the captive users of transport stays there. Probably this difference is layoff and unemployment. Okay, so the data reveals that. It's very very comprehensive that we could understand that. Second, related with the prices, the reduction of tariffs has a major impact on monthly households costs, because for instance, we had, namely in the south bank of metropolitan area, we had a decreasing of 7% of the prices. In some households with the family pass, the reduction was much more expressive. So this is a way to explain and to understand who used public transport. I think with this idea I can answer you. Second are related with the TVDE, the Uber and so. The question is the costs runs for the drivers. So no for the enterprises. So Uber, Cabify, and so on, it's equal to have or not much more, and the risk is near zero. So it's economic model that we must discuss. So this is an issue that I keep talking for a long time, because the economic model, it's much more difficult for the taxi that pays wages every month and have surplus costs than the Uber service. So this is another thing, and of course, as the scooter drivers that go to our home to give us the food and something else, it runs basically from them. So it's the new forms of business that we must take in account. Related with the subsidization of the transport. Yes, clear, it's finally we have a huge intervention from the central government and the local government, of course, to put money in the transport. Not only put money in the transport, but also to put more strategic and tactical issues on the transport provider, the supply. Okay, so it's a big transformation that we had from the last 2 years. So I think the public transport could be runs for next years with very interesting in a very interesting way. I think the new investments that we will have in the metropolitan area of Lisbon related with transport will be also a main issue for a better mobility in the metropolitan area, and to, in a way, to balance the problem of reaching the peripheries where we had some big problems of mobility. So, Karina, I think it's what I can say from now. Thank you.
If no one has questions, I have a last question. No, may I?
Yeah, so it's Professor Jorge have a small problem with the computer. He must turn off, but yes, Heitor, please.
It's about the emissions.
Yeah.
Do you have data about the emissions in Lisbon area, especially in the city, with the pandemic before and after the pandemic situation is, and also if it's possible to know about the emissions evolutions before the introduction of the tariff, the tariff reduction program in Lisbon, 1 April 2019. And so if the reduction that I think has been around Lisbon and in the main roads through Lisbon, if that reduction is now had some impacts on the emission reductions.
Yeah, we have a strong reduction of emissions as we could expect. And we have also some hypotheses of comparing the situation before and after. In any case, we have a problem. We have a problem that we are now trying to solve that are related with the station, the sensors network. It's not so much developed, and so we had some areas that we have no information. In any case, in the Lisbon area, we had some interesting results of reduction, as we could expect, because we had less mobility, so we are naturally less emissions. But we are keeping in account, and in the Lisbon cases, not only the changing of the use of public transport, but also the limitation with the green areas and free of emissions and so on was very important to the emissions reduction in the Lisbon area. So yeah, we have information, we had some work, we not put in this project, of course, but it's also an important issue that we can put in the table.
Okay, thank you.
José.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very stimulating and interesting indeed. My question is, whether or not it is your intention to extend this study in order to try to devise the variability of flows of population across sectors. Apparently, it's clear that the drop in the flows of population is associated, it's just an intuitive perception, is associated to the sector of services by large.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently there will be, I do not know whether you have some evidence on that, it's just normal intuition by the signals, but it would be interesting to understand where the cost services, which ones are normally by telework, okay?
Yeah.
They've been touched by the freeze of flows. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and very interesting project indeed.
Thank you, José. Yes, it is important issue. It's not our main issue in the projects, of course, but I think that we'll have floor to develop some research in that area. Now we are competing with FCT to understand to a project related with teleworking and teleshopping, and in a way the telecommuting. We must wait and see if we will have funding for that project. In any way, it's an important issue because, of course, teleworking work in a way not ever and not for all the sectors. So we must understand what will be the results of this pandemic and the changing using this technology. But yes, it's an important issue, and we will keep attention in this changing, of course.
Thank you.
Hi, hello to all. Sorry for this problem, but my computer freeze. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't respond to you. I couldn't move the image. Nothing. It was a terrible moment. Okay, there is Kelly wrote in the chat that wants to ask something. Go on, Kelly, please. Oh, it's a written question. Thank you. Nuno, if you please can have a look. Nuno, tens de ligar o microfone.
Sorry. Thank you, Kelly. It's a very good point, and the thing is, we are not only the municipality of Lisbon, but also the metropolitan area wants to make a more integrated forms of offering mobility. We are dealing with that kind of projects, of course, and the vision are related with that. In any case, much of the future investments are related with some heavy transport investments to, in a way, close the link that are still missing in our mobility system. Like, for instance, the need to enlarge, to keep going on the, for instance, the red line of metro, and also the peripheral line with LRT. So they are important to, in a way, could close those missing links. But of course, the way it's much more to offer in the mobility as a service, yes, with no doubt. And I think the technicians and the politicians take this issue into account, and they have their objectives related with mobility as a service, yes, no doubt.
All right. No, I have one question too, and
Okay.
I would like to I have some here. There's one more related with the model
Yeah.
because I didn't understand completely. Maybe I was distracted with something.
This.
It is in the regression model.
Yeah. This one.
What would be the main variables? I look to some here, yes, though this is small, but what are the main explanatory factors
Related with.
to COVID 19 diffusion? This is the first question. The second one,
Hmm.
it is issues for the future.
Yeah.
One is the fact that, and I think I learned this with you, the fact that some people are moving back to car and they are reducing the use of public transport. Isn't this a challenge to sustainability?
Yeah.
And do you think that in future, once that people are moving back to car, they will keep using the car, being this a problem to cities and to issues like traffic, numbers of traffic jams, waste of energy, and so on? Or do you think that people will go back to the use of public transport, such as those interesting measures that you have presented and the effects of those measures that lead people to use more transport public in the months before the pandemic were taken? Do you think that this is episodic and associated to pandemics, the use of car, or do you think that is something that is here to stay? And the second issue about the future is local community. So apparently people are also using more, and I think you've shown the results of a questionnaire that people use more the neighborhood facilities and the neighborhood shops, and they walk more, a little bit more in the neighborhood. So which lead has lead you to consider this idea of I don't know, increasing local community presence. My question is, using more the local community presence that can be connected to this idea of 15-minute cities and other issues is not, doesn't have the risk of producing a more unequal city, a city with more
Yeah.
inequalities and a very fragmented city. I mean, it's good that people live more the neighborhood. I think that is a positive thing. You know, in terms of knowing better the others here, enhancing the community feeling, having nice practices as walking and so on. But on the other hand, the city is composed of very unequal spaces, which means that if people remain in these spaces, the right to the city is more limited because people won't go, especially the ones who live in, let us say, the less shiny areas of the city will remain in those areas and won't pass in the brighter ones. What do you think about these two things, the private transport issue and inequality, and also the model, which I didn't understand? It's probably my problem about the variables. Which...
Okay. Okay. I can start it with the model. I think it's much more easy than to the second question. The model that we use it was a quite simple model that was related with the six main variables that Google give us related to mobility, and with the delay of 14 days, we can predict using the 14 days before adjustment, and to use the same parameters for the next 14 days. It's really quite simple, and the results are very interesting indeed, because it's simple and good, and give us a good answer to explain the evolution of the spread. This is only related with mobility, because we consider it as the main issue that could explain the 14 days difference. We don't know, we don't want to justify why during all the pandemics, some conselhos, some municipalities have different behaviors. That was related with the first part of the project. Now we are trying to within each municipality to try to explain what could be the next future, the very next future. So to predict in a way in a short time. Yes.
And considering the national model, what were the main independent variables, that the ones which have a more higher degree of explanation?
The explanation, even at the national level, with this model, it's quite interesting, because we have a good adjustment only with the mobility variables. So we can get a good adjustment related only with the spread. Okay. Of course, we need to explain other form or other effects of the spread with other variables, of course, but we can in a short time to have a good adjustment. This is, for instance, the national adjustment using a 14 days delay between mobility and the number of cases. Okay, so the adjustment is quite interesting to understand, and the main objective was to, in a way, to give a tool that could prevent or could give us some information for give a better idea of the very next future, not to be very surprised, for instance, with the numbers of the beginning of the year. We expected, we had already expected. For instance, we can, with the model, we could explain, for instance, not only the question of the Christmas and New Year Eve, the holidays of the 1st of December and the 8th of December was crucial to the increasing of the cases. So it was not only the 24th of December and the 31st of December, it was also the 1st and the 8th of December that gave us an increase on the new cases. The second, it's much more interesting of you. Of course, when we are planning a city to bicycles, to improve the quality of urban space, it's very important. But our our citizens that will use that new infrastructure, they are only who live in the central areas of the city. And in that case, we are constructing or developing for a small part of our people, because we couldn't get, or we couldn't reach the city center bringing my bicycle from Sintra, or coming from Quinta do Conde by bicycle. It's impossible to do that. And when we are constructing and developing some bicycle lanes and so on, we are trying to serve a population probably and not solve the problem, the major problem of mobility in the metropolitan area. But this is my bad feeling and my irritation with some decisions that we have. And in that case, we are dealing with the problems of inequality on cities. Yes, no doubt about that. About the use of the car. The use of the car has some major problems, of course. We have in simultaneously the use of the car by who can afford it and can pay for having car or other kind of transport, but also for all the others that have no alternative than the use of the private car, because the public transport don't exist in the areas that they live. And that was the best way to solve his mobility problems. And for example, they could, a household could pay for a new car for 600 euros, for instance, and his mobility problem is partially solved. So it's a problem. Another problem is related with the use of the car and the use, for instance, with the electric car. And we imagine that with the electric car, we will solve all the problems related with emissions. It's another problem that we must solve, because the electric cars use the same space that diesel car or a petrol car. So that is a question of space use and the space of occupation. But also with the emissions, what we can do when all the batteries that we use in the cars must be replaced or placed elsewhere. It is a major problem. It's the same problem that we have with the two wheels, the scooters that we have in Lisbon. You know how many times a scooter that we ride in Lisbon have his life, the lifetime of each scooter? Have you any idea? The lifetime of a scooter is less than 1 month. The rest is trash. What we want to do with all that trash. So we must think seriously about mobility problems. And of course, the main issue that you said, George, that is mobility, it's a problem also of inequality and we must take it in account. So the problem that we have now, for me, the returning of the use of public transport will take several years, I suppose. Unfortunately, the pandemic strikes us very strongly, and all the improvement that we could face it in the last year with its go down, and I hope that the better service that we can afford with the new contractualization of bus service could help to to reduce the time of on the returning to public transport. Because the problem that we have in the metropolitan area is not only a question of price, it's also a question of service, and we try it with the new contractualization to solve one of the several problems that are related with the network, the service network of the transit. So let be a little bit more not so, a little bit more
complex, tricky.
yes, yeah, but we will see.
Okay. Thank you, Nuno. All right. One last call for questions, if there are still some, now that we are coming to an end of this session. Yeah, I'll ask Nuno also to make me host of the session.
Yeah, no, sure. No, sorry.
Because I lost the privileges due to that technical problem. Okay, so if there are no more questions and comments, I want to thank very much Nuno for the presentation. Thank you, it was very good. And also for the time to answer to the questions which the students and us have raised. And we will resume the sessions. I am checking here because I'm not sure. I think we'll resume sessions after Easter, I guess. Let me just have a look at here. Or do you know, now we have a break, isn't it? Yeah, somebody there that can confirm the break?
Yes, I think so, but I'm not sure.
But yes, we do have a break now. We have a break next week for Easter. Actually, it's Easter Friday. So Easter Friday, there is no session. And we will return on the 9th of April with Mohamed Jibrin from the Center for Dryland Agriculture from Bayero University, Nigeria. So I wish you all a good break. First, a very nice weekend, then a very good break, and we will meet again in 2 weeks' time here. I mean, not here, because it will be another link for that session. We will inform you about the links for the coming sessions sometime during next week or at the beginning of the other one. So all the best for you. Take care, and we will meet soon.
Be safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Have a nice one.
Bye.
Obrigado, Nuno. Vou ver se agora para aqui a gravação, que isso pelo
Tá
menos
bem.
sempre. Onde é que paro isto?
Era isto que tu querias?
Era isto, sim, senhora. Correu muito bem. Olha, e aproveita, manda-me depois, se puder ser, o PowerPoint para eu
Claro.
passar para os tipos,
Tá
manda
bem.
um PDF
Tá bem.
do PowerPoint.
Queres em PDF ou em PowerPoint mesmo?
Não, manda em PDF, não. Manda já
Tá
uma
bem.
versão PDF e eu
Tá bem.
depois mando para eles. Tá?
Pronto. As perguntas foram muito interessantes, pá.
Foram, sim, senhora. Não, e há um grupo aqui de malta que...
Uma pessoa que eu já estava à espera, não é? 2 pessoas que eu já estava à espera que fizessem. Mas, sim,
Quando
muito
dizes
interessante.
duas, mas dizes duas. Eu pensei que já estavas à espera do...
Não, e da Kelly.
leitor.
E da,
E a Kelly,
do
tá bem.
leitor e da Kelly. Já estava à espera.
Não, pois é, porque a Kelly é da geração anterior, não é?
Exatamente. Mas estava à espera desta do leitor, claro. Evidente. E da Kelly, claro.
Está bem.
Está bem?
Ok. Nuno, vamos
Vá.
então comparar isto. Tchau.
Tchau, rapaz.
Tchau, bom fim de semana.
Bom fim de semana. Goza bem o fim de semana com um dia de anos com 23 horas.
É verdade, não só o dia de anos com 23 horas, como um gajo está preso. Pronto, tudo bem. Tu já estarás, também vais estar preso.
Mas tenho 24 horas.
Normais. Tchau, Nuno.
Tchau, rapaz. Obrigado, pá. Um abraço. Pá.